Hello and welcome to Perspectives. My name is David Schoneman. I'm your host on this program. On Perspectives, we often take a look at what's going on in Nashua and the state of New Hampshire, and nationally too, as we're leading up to an election. Well, today we are about 2 weeks post 2024 elections, and so today we're going to take a look retrospectively. We usually look prospectively, heading towards an election, but today we're going to look backwards a little bit. And I'm here in the studio once again with my friend Dave Narkunas. Dave is a resident of Nashua here. He's in Ward 4, and he was on the ballot for state rep, and we had a chance to speak with him a couple weeks ago, and we've had the election. We'll talk about how that went and what else is going on in the country. Thanks for tuning in. Dave, welcome. Thanks for coming in.
And thanks for having me, as always.
So, we had an election 2 weeks ago. You were on the ballot. We spoke about it leading up to election just a few weeks ago on the show. How'd it go?
I ended up, state rep for half a day.
Tell us that story.
A lot of the papers and the internet had me as winning Ward 4. It was due to the handwriting of the person who wrote on the actual, the final tally sheet that was signed off by the clerk. I ended up fourth in reality.
Fourth out of six candidates.
Out of six
the
candidates.
top three get in.
Top three, they get sworn in and conquered. And unfortunately, the zero, I had over 1,000 votes. I had 1,050 votes, but the zero that was written looked like it looked exactly like a 9, and I can't fault any of the online sources for putting it because it looks just like a 9.
Right.
And I was there all day from 5:45 a.m. till about almost 10 o'clock at night. And I had Tom from an alderman, one of the aldermen, previously he was an alderman, I don't think he is anymore, but he sent me some screenshots confirming, what was actually printed out of the machine.
So you knew.
I said, what happened? So
you went to bed that night knowing that you had lost.
I believed I lost. And all of a sudden, where did 900, so the next day though, the emails started going like wildfire. You won. I was like, where do they find these votes? Where do they find these votes? So, unfortunately, it was just, the handwriting wasn't on
So someone transcribed it incorrectly, and instead of writing down 1,050, they wrote down 1,950.
Yes, they wrote 1950.
And so you went from being fourth to being way out in front.
Yeah, by a landslide. So unfortunately for me.
Did you have two machines in your ward? Two vote counting machines?
I think there was one.
One? In Ward 3, we had two, and I noticed last time I ran, well, not the last time. What was the last time? Last time I ran was in 2020. I ran for state rep, and we had a big turnout then too, just like we had this time, but we had two machines in Ward 3. And it was interesting because you would expect that the tapes from each machine would be the same, roughly, percentage-wise, because there's a machine on the left of the door, machine on the right of the door. It doesn't say Republicans here, Democrats here. It doesn't say that. Just whichever machine is open, people go and put their ballot in. And I looked at the two tapes at the end of the day, and on one tape, I won. On the other tape, I got blown out of the water. So it always struck me as a little odd. So I did some digging, and it turns out that all the absentee ballots in 2020 were run through only on one machine. So of the people that showed up to vote during the day, that day, I came in third. So I would have made it as state rep, was among the top three. But on the other machine, which was same day plus absentee, all the early ballots that come in, absentee ballots, I lost big time, and you add them together, and I didn't make it. But I thought it was interesting to look at the two tapes because they tell an interesting story. What the story tells me for 2020 is that the cross-section of voters, the average voter who votes absentee, is way skewed in comparison to the average voter who shows up at the polls. Very interesting. Now, this time we had a lot of people across the country who were voting early. We don't vote early in New Hampshire unless it's absentee. But I know in many other states people voted early, and it was big turnout early. But we had big turnout here in Nashua, right? You said you were at the polls all day. You saw a lot of new registrations. I was at Ward 3 part of the day, and there were a lot. The line for new registrations was incredible.
We had a line that went from the door of the gym all the way wrapped almost around the building to the side where you could actually see people The whole inside was completely lined.
And
it
that's for new registrations.
No, it was everyone combined, and then they started to take people and put them just in one.
Yeah, at Ward 3, when I voted, if you were a registered voter, you can just go right in because the counters were open there, for your name. But if you were registering to vote, it was a very long line out and around the building. Now, I don't know when in Ward 3 they separated it out and said, okay, if you're waiting to register, you wait in this line, and if you're registered, you can go straight in.
They had Ward 4 had a specific designated table with a number of people there
inside the building.
Inside,
yeah.
So, right when you walk in on the right, they had a big long table with a number of people there, and it came to the point where they started panicking and saying, we don't know if we're going to be able to get all these people signed up so that they can vote. I was literally approached from someone.
You were standing and holding your sign?
I was holding my sign. One of a few. We were outnumbered like 30-1.
Yeah, I know.
Across the way.
Yeah.
They had an army of people.
Yeah.
But so anyhow, someone comes up to me and says, hey, we're getting crushed here. We need, can you come in and help us register people to vote? And then somewhere in the back, the hamster wheel in the back of my head said, you're on the ballot. Are you sure that it's not against any rules?
Right, so you said, hey, I'm on the ballot.
So I said, I'll help out gladly, but we got to make sure that this is going to be legit and it's not going to cause any conflicts of interest.
Because you're on the ballot.
And they came back and they said, it is a conflict of interest. And we thank you for offering to help, but you can't. So I went back outside.
So they came to ask you.
Yeah, they just needed more manpower.
Well, I think it was wise to remember that you were on the ballot, of course. I mean, you didn't forget it, but
right.
wise to point that out because it's an obvious conflict. And maybe they should have asked you, too, if you were holding the sign. They may should have asked you first. But I'm glad nothing went wrong there. But we did have a huge turnout.
They were able to get everyone registered who wanted to vote, and it faded out slowly towards the end. Everyone who wanted to vote could vote.
Yep.
And I was told that more than double the number of people who voted in the last presidential election voted this time. It was more than double.
More than double. I think that's very interesting. We were talking about that a little bit before the show. I took a look at some of the national vote totals and hear stories about, the vote is going up. People are coming out to vote. People who haven't voted, all these new registrations, early voting, the lines were long in other states. Of course, we don't have that here in New Hampshire. But we looked at the 2020 vote totals for President Trump and Joe Biden. And Trump got about 74 million.
Yep.
And Biden got 81. So what does that add to? As 150?
155.
155?
55.
Okay. We'll
Yeah.
have to do the math again.
155.
Okay. But then you look at Trump and Harris, and Trump got about 76 million, and Harris got about 75. So that adds to a lower number.
I thought it was 74. It was 5 million less.
Yeah, 5 million less. 5 million fewer people. In spite of the fact that here in Nashua, we saw, like you said, double the number of people voted in the presidential.
Just my ward.
And just your ward. I don't know about the rest of
Nashua.
Nashua. I don't know that either. Or New Hampshire. Yeah. But I saw a lot of new people registering to vote in Ward 3. You saw a lot of new people registering
tons.
in Ward 4. And at the end of the day, you found out that twice as many people voted in this presidential election than voted in 2020 in Ward 4.
Yep.
And you hear stories about nationally, all these people coming out to vote. But yet, the overall vote total in 2024 was about 5 million less. Yeah. 5 million fewer people voted. Why didn't those people vote?
It just makes you question the validity of the previous results.
Well,
the whole reason is thrown up in the air. And
it does. I mean, someone should look at that.
And then, so
why did 5 million fewer people vote?
So many more votes than Harris. What was it?
Yeah,
it was 82 and 60?
82 versus about 74.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 74.
Yeah.
But that's
a huge margin. Why did Biden in 2020 get that many more votes than Harris did in this election?
The reason the song was written, Dave, Pallets of Ballots. Remember that guy who wrote that song, Pallets of Ballots?
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know, but it is interesting to look at because we do hear stories about this huge increase in early voting. And across the country, you hear about huge numbers of people voting. And in your own ward, Ward 4, Twice as many people voted in this presidential election as voted in 2020. Yet somehow, at the end of the day, across the country, 5 million fewer people voted. Now, I would expect every 4 years, when there's a presidential election, the total number of votes cast would be the same or more, because the population continues to grow.
Right.
I think. I mean, the U.S. population is not shrinking, so if the population continues to grow, the number of voters should continue to grow. But why was there a $5 million voter loss?
Yeah. I don't know. And also, I think I'm pretty sure I saw a graph that had the 2016 numbers for Trump. Same.
Yeah.
Like it looked like it really didn't change that much, more than like 2% or something.
Well,
like that.
Trump, I mean, I think Trump got a lot of voters this time. Certainly, obviously did. But he got 2 million more than he got in 2020. That's only 2 million.
Well, think about the population. What do we got? 338 million people?
Something like that, yeah.
That's a very small percentage when you consider it.
When you consider it. But he got roughly the same. He just got 2 million more than he got in 2020.
And then again, back to what you said
but
about the
look at
population.
Biden, he went from 81 down to Harris down at 73 or 75, whatever it was.
74 something.
74.8, I think, is what I saw just before the show. So it's just surprising. It's one of those things you look at and you say, what happened? Why? I mean, it'd be nice to have some kind of explanation. Why did 5 million fewer people vote in 2024 than voted in 2020? When, at the same time, like you say, here in New Hampshire and Nashua, we saw such huge increases in voter participation. I'm glad to see the increase in voter participation. I think it's great. But nationally, it went down, and that's just surprising, given all the hype about this election. I would expect the turnout for 2024 to have been higher overall.
Yep, I agree.
So let's talk about what happened here in New Hampshire. So New Hampshire went for Harris.
Yeah, I think it was 52-48.
Okay, so about a 4%, about a 4%, 4-point difference there. But Kelly Ayotte won for governor, and we had a Republican-controlled Senate last time. We still do.
Yep.
We had a Republican-controlled House. We still do. I think we gained a couple seats, if I'm not mistaken. I think here in Nashua, in 2020, we had no Republicans got elected to the State House here in New Hampshire. But this time, I think we got 2. So 2 out of 27. Yeah, 2 out of 27. You know, in 2010, when it was Obama's first midterm, Obama got elected in 2008. And 2010, it was Obama's first midterm, and every single seat in Nashua for Senate and for State House went Republican. And now, here we are, I mean, a real referendum, I think, on how bad the Biden-Harris administration was for America.
Atrocious.
But we only have 2 seats. So as bad as the Democrats have been, and it's not just Biden-Harris. You look around the nation, you got Schoneman and Pelosi. Yeah, true.
Minneapolis,
Unbelievable. The things that have happened, really bad. And you talk about energy and inflation, all these things, which is bad. And that's why Trump won, because he offered a real alternative.
Almost everything they touched turned to, went south.
Yes.
Everything. I challenge people. I say, you tell me one major accomplishment done by the Biden-Harris administration.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah.
And yet you'll vote for these people because they're not Trump. They vote for the party and not the person.
I think that's it. I think that there's still a residual within New Hampshire, a lot of no Trumpers, never Trumpers. They hate Trump. Because we talked about this before the show. I mean, if Nashua or if New Hampshire is populated by independents, and maybe many of whom are a little bit right of center, because look what we got for the House and the Senate and the executive. We still have the executive council. So within the state, we've got Republican control in the 4 bodies. That's corner office, the governor. That's the Senate, the House, and the executive council. All 4 are under Republican control, and they were last time too. So we've maintained that. Those folks are right of center. Those Republicans who are in office here in New Hampshire. They're not left of center, because otherwise they'd be Democrats. They're Republicans. And Trump may have been perceived, probably, being a little further to the right than the average successful Republican in the State House here. But look at Harris. Harris was way over, much farther left than Trump was right.
Yeah.
So if a centrist in New Hampshire says, I like centrism, but Trump's too far over here. But if they vote for Harris, that's not a centrist position. But many of the same people who voted for Harris then came back and voted Republican, centrist, right of center for the State House. Now, I also know a gentleman who participated in helped a recount here in 2024, and he saw a lot of the ballots because they were counting them, they're handling them by hand.
Yeah.
And he said that many of the ballots had votes cast in the top of the ballot, president and governor,
and they didn't do the
and then they didn't go down ballot. So that could be why we had a state that went for Harris, but then Concord stayed Republican, because maybe a lot of the people that voted for Harris didn't vote down ballot. I don't know. But there are some interesting things to kind of look at and think about. And here we are taking a retrospective on the election 2 weeks ago, and you just kind of wonder, what happened?
A lot more emphasis should have been put on the importance of the entire ballot, And I really wish I could find out what percentage of people on the Democrat side versus Republican side who filled the entire ballot out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure some people would just want to get in and out. They just want their presidential candidate to win and the governor, and then that's it.
Yeah.
I bet you probably was a lot like that.
Well, we have 400 state reps here in New
the most of any state, right?
More. It's the third largest in the world.
In the world, right?
Number one, I think, is a country in Sweden or Norway or something like that.
And
then U.S. is 435, U.S. Capitol, U.S. Congress. And then here we're the third in the world. So that's a lot of people to get to know. And maybe with such a small, with 400 reps, each rep is responsible for about 3,000 people, representing 3,000 people here in New Hampshire. And it might be that some of those races, the voters just don't know the candidates. So they might say, well, I don't know any of those candidates, left or right. So maybe they just don't vote. That's fine, but I think it's good when a voter takes time to find out who the candidates are and really go down ballot, because these races are important too.
Yeah.
So, interesting. What's the overall effect of this election? This is a blowout. To me, it's interesting. 312 electoral votes to 216 or something like that, roughly, something like that. A huge difference in the electoral college. And of course, Trump won the popular vote too, but not by as big a margin as I would have thought. Or as I would like to see. Granted, it's like a 5 million vote margin, something like that.
Right.
4 or 5, 3, 4 or 5, something like that. But why isn't it? Why isn't it really big? Now, with the electoral college, clearly Trump got most of the states. He got the heavy.
Yeah.
He got the most votes. So there is a seismic shift that this represents, because we have the Senate in Washington, we got the House. So we've got the trifecta, right? We've got everything.
We need people on our side to vote the right way.
Yeah.
This is the thing. You will always, even if it's ridiculous, the Democrats, like a safety in women's sports bill, remember that?
Yes.
100% of Democrats voted against it. And
that was a bigger issue, I think, for a lot of people than the Democrats might have thought.
So we need to vote with that kind of staunchness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In order to make practical, rational bills, propose rational bills, and just like a landslide, we have to just have every Republican go for it. It's so close that if you got some rhinos, they're going to screw it up.
It's still close, because even with it being the blowout that people say it was, nationally, it's a 4 million vote margin. It's not that big.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a margin.
Right.
And I think that we need to focus on the common sense aspect. I think Trump campaign did that. They said that we are the common sense alternative here. We're going to bring common sense back.
And that's exactly.
And I think men and women's sports, we don't want men and women's sports.
We're going to undo a lot of damage. This is what he does. Trump will make a promise and keep the promise.
Yeah.
And execute the way to get it accomplished.
Yeah.
And he just do it again. He did it last time, and that's when everyone paid attention. And I was doing the best I ever was in my whole life.
I know.
Under Trump, the best.
Most
I lost
people were.
everything.
Yeah.
Under the Biden-Harris. Yeah. I lost everything. High-paying job, because of getting into COVID. Don't want to even think about the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
I had to make a personal, ethical decision that
Yeah.
cost me everything.
Yeah.
And he's going to bring it back. And
I think so.
I work a lot of overtime. Well, hopefully it picks up.
Yes.
The beginning of next year,
Sure.
where I work, it's
Yeah.
Getting cold.
Yeah.
The weather is going to put a damper on that. But
Yeah.
I'm optimistic.
I'm optimistic too.
I'm optimistic, and this is, and you can feel it, and you can see it, and you can.
And he's certainly hitting the ground running. You know, one of the metrics for new presidents is always what do they do in the first 100 days?
And the market.
And the market. Yeah, the market soared.
Usually it tanks because of instability and
Yes.
all the questions that are out there.
Yeah.
But no,
The
people
market
are
soared.
confident. He's already doing things. World leaders are already changing things. They're already going to buy U.S. gas. It's all, he's got dominoes falling in
Right.
his favor, in our favor, in America's favor.
In America's favor. In America's favor.
And,
Because we haven't even gotten to Inauguration Day. The election was roughly 62 days
Yeah.
before inauguration. So we're only 14 days into the 62 days.
Yep.
Until we get to inauguration. And then the metric is what do they do in the first 100 days? But Trump has hit the ground running.
He made a phone call to Mayor, was it Adams in New York? Within an hour, all the debit cards are going to stop work. Remember? No, we're going to keep that for the state. You know,
Yeah.
a simple phone call from Donald Trump can just change things.
It does change
Now
things.
think about this. Do you think that Biden would have the ability to do this?
Well, he certainly had the opportunity, but he doesn't have the ability. He didn't, nor would Harris have had the ability. I mean, he had the opportunity. As president, you have the opportunity. President has an opportunity. And Biden's president. He had the opportunity. But
Yeah.
instead of continuing to build the wall, instead of protecting America, he chose to go the other way. Maybe he was being pushed by people behind him. The entire Democrat Party certainly lurched to the left. But it's interesting because, there seems to be people kind of coming back. Look what's happening but there's still a lot of resistance. Take Seth Moulton. Seth Moulton is a rep from Massachusetts. And he came out and right after the election, he said, hey, I don't want men playing in women's sports.
He caught
and they
hell.
are going
They went
after
nuts.
him.
They went
They're
nuts.
going nuts.
Yeah.
But people like him are moving over. We see Tulsi Gabbard. Now she's on the cabinet, or at least nominated for cabinet role. She was a Democrat presidential candidate. Then she became independent. Then she became Republican. And now she's part of the Trump administration. So people, whether they're high profile or people in the ranks, are making a move. It was funny. You see what AOC did? AOC changed her
Yes. Oh yeah. Fox,
her bio, right? She
Yeah.
changed her online bio.
To what? Congress. I saw it.
She changed her
Representative,
bio
right?
and she
Yeah.
dropped her pronouns because she had a section in it that said, my preferred pronouns are
Yeah.
she and her, right? She dropped that because, is she no longer she and her? I think she's still she and her. But she didn't want to be making a point of it because it was clear from the election results that people are tired of that kind of, voters are tired of that.
Absolutely.
Voters are tired of it. I think voters are tired of the whole abortion panic thing too that the left was pushing, because that was Harris's prime focus was abortion, abortion, abortion. And Trump, it wasn't Trump. Trump nominated Supreme Court justices who are conservative. Now, conservative in the Supreme Court doesn't mean you're Republican. Conservative in the Supreme Court means you go by the Constitution.
Right.
Liberal on the Supreme Court means you believe the Constitution is a flexible document and you can change it to suit your will.
A lot of younger people think it's more flexible than
It's not.
intended. I think it should be construed a lot more strict.
And that's why it's a constitution. Because if it's not construed strictly, if it's not a strict interpretation, then it's not a constitution. Because that means that things can change. The idea behind a constitution is that the country has stability. And if you can change the constitution, then where's the stability?
The whole thing is we need to just enforce the rules we have on the books already.
Yeah.
And make people accountable.
Yeah,
That's
we do.
one of my platforms that I'll have to the end of time is follow the Constitution, be accountable.
Yeah.
And be punished if you screw it up.
Well, you don't want to fall into that category, but I think you do. Let's talk about that real quick. Only got a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
We'll go back to the national thing and following the rules. Interesting story developing in Pennsylvania. The Senator Casey has not conceded the race. A Republican senator, new candidate, I forgot his name. He's running against Casey in Pennsylvania. Casey has lost, but there's still provisional ballots out there, and he has not conceded the race. It's been called by numerous
I heard AP
entities,
maybe.
AP, I think Fox, a bunch of others have called it, because it's really statistically not possible for Casey to pull it out. So let's get on with it. Casey should concede. But he hasn't. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, I hope I get the story right, but some body in Pennsylvania, it's either elections related or the Supreme Court, has said that certain ballots are eligible to be counted, certain ballots are not. They must be signed appropriately, the front signed or whatever. If it's an absentee ballot, it has to be signed. And the poll workers that are working on this recount or continuing to count votes are flagrantly disregarding that law. And they are counting ballots that are, by the Supreme Court ruling, Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling, considered to be illegal. They weren't signed properly. They weren't filled out properly. It's an absentee ballot. It didn't have the second envelope, for instance. So we have vote counters in Pennsylvania who are struggling to find more votes. Maybe this is what happened in 2020 and why there's 5 million more votes in 2020 than there were in 2024. But we got a big battle brewing in Pennsylvania because this vote counting effort is in flagrant violation of the rules established by the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah.
Dave, we got 29 seconds left here. We're just about done. Thanks for coming in. We'll do this again.
Yeah.
I like conversing about what's going on nationally and the trends, the things that we're seeing, and what it means for the future. So we're optimistic. We're going to see that stock market continue to move. That would be great. I hope that things shape up for you and you get back to where you were 4 years ago in your own career and financially and all that stuff. But in the meantime, we'll get back together again and we'll talk some more. Thanks for coming in.
Of course.
And I want to thank you folks for tuning in to Your Watching Perspectives. My name is David Schoneman, here with Dave Narkunas, and we've been talking about the results of this election, what some of the implications are, what some of the interesting things that we see 2 weeks after the election that have actually occurred, taking a retrospective look. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.